Somewhere in northeastern Italy, in a small town most people have never heard of, sits the most powerful bulldozer ever built. 183 tons of steel, 2 Caterpillar engines producing 1,350 horsepower combined, a blade that could swallow a school bus whole. By any measure, weight, power, raw scale, this machine beats everything that came before it, and everything built since. There's just one problem with it. It has never moved a single cubic meter of earth. Right now, somewhere in the world, hundreds of Caterpillar D11 bulldozers are working. They've been moving earth since 1986. By the year 2000, Caterpillar had already sold over 3,000 of them, and the Komatsu D575A, the machine the industry calls the world's largest production bulldozer, has worked in open-pit coal mines from West Virginia to Western Australia. The ACCO Super Bulldozer has worked nowhere, and the story of why is one of the most extraordinary in the history of heavy machinery. Because it wasn't an engineering failure. It wasn't a design flaw. It wasn't even a business mistake. It was stopped by a dictator, an act of terrorism, and a presidential executive order signed in Washington, D.C. To understand the ACCO, you have to understand the man who built it. His name was Umberto Acco, and like many of the great engineers in this series, he was not a famous man. He ran a construction and earth-moving company out of Portogruaro, a company he had built since 1945, literally from the ground up. By 1980, he had earned a reputation as one of Italy's most daring engineers of heavy equipment. And in this same year, he got the contract of a lifetime. Libya, 1980. Under Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan government was pouring oil money into a massive modernization program. Agriculture, infrastructure, irrigation. Gaddafi had a dream: to make the Libyan desert bloom. The scale of that ambition was staggering. Libya needed to move enormous volumes of earth to build canals, pipelines, irrigation networks across some of the most remote, hostile terrain on the planet. For that, they needed the biggest earth-moving equipment on Earth, not a standard Cat D10, the largest bulldozer Caterpillar made at the time. Not anything commercially available, something purpose-built, something that didn't exist yet. So Umberto Acco built it. The build was a feat of extraordinary improvisation. Acco used Caterpillar components as the foundation: engines, drivetrain elements, hydraulic systems, but the key word is foundation. Everything structural, everything at scale, had to be custom fabricated. The blade alone, 7 meters wide, 2.7 meters high, was larger than anything Caterpillar itself had ever built. The power solution was elegant in its simplicity. 2 Caterpillar diesel engines, each producing 675 horsepower, mounted horizontally opposed inside the machine, one driving the left track, one driving the right, together 1,350 horsepower. The kind of number that makes engineers pause. When it was complete, the ACCO Super Bulldozer weighed 183 metric tons. Its ripper at the rear stood nearly 10 feet tall, powered by hydraulic rams that could split bedrock. The total length from blade tip to ripper stretched over 23 meters. That was 1980. The machine was ready. The contract was in place. And then the world changed. To tell you why the ACCO never shipped, we need to step back from the machine itself and look at the world it was built into. By the early 1980s, Colonel Gaddafi had made Libya one of the most internationally isolated nations on Earth. His government was actively supporting terrorist organizations across Europe and the Middle East. In April 1986, a bomb detonated inside a West Berlin discotheque, La Belle, a club popular with American soldiers. 2 U.S. servicemen and a Turkish woman were killed. Hundreds more were wounded. American intelligence quickly traced the attack to Libyan intelligence services. President Ronald Reagan responded with military strikes on Tripoli and Benghazi, and with something that would seal the fate of a bulldozer sitting in a warehouse in northern Italy. On January 7, 1986, Reagan had already signed Executive Order 12,543, imposing a comprehensive economic embargo on Libya. Trade, contracts, exports, all of it stopped. There was one problem. The ACCO Super Bulldozer was built from Caterpillar components, and Caterpillar is an American company. The machine that had been purpose-built for Libya, that had been waiting complete, ready to be shipped, was now subject to the embargo. Under U.S. law, exporting it to Libya was illegal. The ACCO Super Bulldozer went into storage, and it never came out for work, not then, not ever. While the ACCO Bulldozer sat untouched in northern Italy, the bulldozer industry moved forward, and the comparison tells a remarkable story, not just about size and power, but about what makes a machine truly useful. The ACCO's blade capacity is 25.5 cubic meters. The Cat D11T carry dozer pushes 43.6 cubic meters per pass. The Komatsu D575A can push 69 cubic meters in a single pass, nearly 3 times what the ACCO could move. The ACCO was designed with a relatively flat push blade, essentially brute force. The Komatsu and Caterpillar machines developed deeply curved blade geometries, shapes that literally carry the material rather than just pushing it. The dirt loads into the curve and stays there through the entire pass, like a moving wall that holds its cargo. The result is dramatically more material moved per unit of power and fuel. The ACCO was built before that design evolution, built with the engineering assumptions of the early 1980s, built for a project that would never happen, and so it never had the chance to be refined, improved, or updated. The Caterpillar D11 became the industry benchmark, not because it was the biggest, but because it struck the right balance. By the year 2000, Caterpillar had sold over 3,000 D11 units at prices in the range of $2 to $3 million each. The Komatsu D575A took a different approach: maximum output regardless of scale. At 152 metric tons and 1,150 horsepower, it earned the title world's largest production bulldozer. Umberto Acco never saw his machine work. He died, and shortly afterward, his son died too. There was no one left to lead the company, no succession plan, no legacy of management. By 2008, the ACCO facility had transformed into a graveyard, a dumping ground for surplus earth-moving equipment. And somewhere in that industrial decay, the Super Bulldozer sat alongside its companion, an equally extraordinary machine almost nobody knows about. Because Umberto Acco hadn't just built one world record machine for Libya, he had also built a super grader, 200 metric tons, 1,700 horsepower, even bigger and more powerful than the bulldozer, built on the same scale, for the same contract, for the same desert that was never reached. The super grader was slightly luckier. It worked. A handful of beach reclamation projects in Italy. Then it was mothballed. Then sometime in the early 2000s, it was scrapped, gone. The biggest grader ever built, and virtually no one recorded it. The bulldozer survived. In May 2012, a small group of enthusiasts and preservationists arranged something remarkable. They moved the ACCO Super Bulldozer out of the decaying facility under its own power and onto a transport trailer. A machine that had never commercially pushed so much as a cubic meter of earth drove itself onto a flatbed for the first time in 30 years. It was transported to a gardening company in the same town, a place called Bejaflor, where it has been preserved, displayed, and cared for ever since. And there it sat, a monument to engineering ambition, geopolitical bad luck, and the unpredictability of history. Libya eventually built the Great Man-Made River, one of the largest irrigation infrastructure projects in history. Without this bulldozer, it took decades. Whether the ACCO would have changed the pace of that work is impossible to know. What's certain is that the people who built it believed it would. The ACCO Super Bulldozer is the heaviest bulldozer ever built, the most powerful single bulldozer ever built, and the least productive bulldozer in the history of earth moving. With 0 cubic meters moved and 0 commercial hours logged. It's not a failure story. It's not a success story. It's something rarer than either. A machine that was genuinely extraordinary, built by a man who genuinely believed in it, stopped by a world that had its own plans. The ACCO Super Bulldozer never moved the Libyan desert, but it's still here. And in a world where most machines, this ambitious, end up as scrap, maybe that's its own kind of victory. The ACCO never got to move Earth, but another machine, smaller, stranger, and far more radical in its design, quietly changed the way the entire industry does it. That story is up next. How this radical scraper changed Earth moving forever. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Heavy Machines Era. There's a lot more ground to cover.